and welcome to Aging Well in Georgina. I'm Geraldine Pitschke, and I'm your host for today. This is a show for people like you and me who want to know more about what we can do now to stay happy, healthy, and strong as we age. We'll share resources and services that are available in our community, and we'll talk to people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond who are living their best life now. Today on the show, I want to talk about something that is so important in our community, and that is volunteering. You know, volunteers, we see them everywhere. The hospital, at the sports events, we see people at the schools, they're mentoring, and there are so many organizations who just couldn't run without volunteering. I mean, volunteers are really the backbone of our society. So I really want to talk to that today. And there's an organization in our community, Roots Connecting Communities. And this is an organization that is, it's a community non-for-profit, and it's in York Region. It's been serving our community for 30 years now. And Roots provides safe, affordable, compassionate, and timely transportation for people who need to get to, say, their medical appointments or social engagement, or maybe it's a recreational thing. But if you need transportation, Roots is a great organization for you to get in touch with. And Roots has an amazing volunteer driver team, and they do a wonderful job at transporting local people to their everyday appointments. So today we have two wonderful volunteers that we're going to talk to. Our first guest is Bruce Patton, and Bruce is a volunteer driver with Roots Connecting Communities. And we have Marg Landry, and Marg is also a volunteer, and she volunteers with the Georgina Food Pantry. So let's meet our guests. Hi, Bruce, how are you? Hi, Marg.
Hi, Geraldine, how are you doing?
I'm great.
Good.
Hi, Marg.
Hi, how are you doing, Geraldine?
Good. Just thank you so much for joining me today. This is great. You know, I really do mean that when I say that volunteers are really the backbone of our society. It's just wonderful that we have so many volunteers helping out to make everything run smoothly. So, Bruce, I'd like to start with you.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce, tell me a little bit about yourself and what led you to volunteering.
Well, you know, I'm retired. I've been retired for a period of time, and I just found I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I've always been involved in volunteering to some degree anyway, since really about 2000. And I like the idea of giving back to the community to begin with. I just find that with the amount of time I have, it keeps me active. It keeps, I meet all sorts of nice people when I'm driving with Roots. It's a fantastic organization to deal with. It really is. It's one of those organizations that really is helping a lot of people get to places that they might not normally be able to get to. So basically what happened is a couple of years ago, I was sitting around, and as I said, I had a lot of time, and I just decided that I would search out a few of the volunteer organizations that are in York Region, and I came up with Roots. And so I gave Sandra at Roots a call and asked if they were looking for drivers. And she said they were, so I went up and met with her, and we went through a little bit of an interview process, and I've been driving ever since. As I said, I just absolutely love it. I love the people I meet. It's a great organization to work with.
That's excellent. Thank you. Marg, tell me a little bit about you and what led you to volunteering?
Well, we moved up here to the community about 10 years ago, and I've been volunteering since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. But when we moved up here about 10 years ago, I was retired. And I just wanted to get involved in the community and meet new people. So we started actually up here. It was a birthday party for my husband, and we chose the food pantry as for gifts or monetary. And that's how I met Catherine Cook and Trish Kozar, and that's how I became part of the Georgina Food Pantry. And that's 7 years ago.
That is so excellent. And, you know, our community really appreciates all of our volunteers. And I think, Bruce, you've answered me like, why did you choose Roots? Because, of course, it is a great organization.
Mhm.
And tell me a little bit about your experience as a volunteer driver.
Um, the people I meet, number one, are just absolutely fantastic people. They're people that are going through some life challenges, and but they come from all walks of life. When I take them on drives, we always have great conversations, and to a certain extent, you get to know them well enough that they're almost friends. We can talk about pretty well anything. We just really, really enjoy each other's company, and I know that I'm taking them places that they might not normally be able to get to. And it's just, and I feel that if I wasn't taking them, they might not be able to get there at all. And the other thing that I like about Roots is they go for social inclusion. They want they want to make sure that people have access to get to the outside community area as well. So it's not just based on taking somebody to a doctor's office, for example, or to a hospital. We take people to food banks. We take them, if they've got a friend that they haven't seen in a long period of time and normally wouldn't have a way to get to meet that friend, we'll drive them. So we really cover a broad spectrum of people that need transportation to get to areas that they have to get to.
Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of people, especially I think as you get older, especially if you're living in a community like Georgina, where we do have transportation, but a lot of people are living in rural areas. So it is hard. And, the other thing too, is it could be a mobility issue, right? And people can't get where they need to go. So this is really excellent. I know that a lot of the drivers are trained to work with people that have a disability, whether it's a wheelchair or whether it's a physical disability. But Marg, the other thing that Marg was telling me was that, of course, Roots does event days where they have like charters and they go and do other things that are lots of fun. And Marg, you were telling me that you've actually gone on some of those rides. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, one of the things I was doing through the pantry, I had to organize rides for a cooking class I was doing. And I got to know Shelley, and then became aware of some of the trips that they've done. And I have a group of friends, the Georgina Gems, who some of us don't like to drive far, some don't drive at all. So all of a sudden, we were going on bus trips, and we would go down. We went to the St. Lawrence Market for $10 a person. You can't go and drive there and park for that. And that would be a bus of 24 people. So it was just, we've been to St. Lawrence Market, St. Jacobs. We went down to Canada Blooms. We've gone up to Mariposa Market. We've done all kinds of these wonderful trips that Roots provides.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's excellent. Especially I think the trips, of course, are really great. I know when we come back from break, maybe you'll tell us a little bit more about the Georgina Gems. But, I think the other thing too is that, of course, when you're volunteering, it is a great opportunity to stay involved. To stay physically active. Of course, you're making, there's lots of people you're going to meet, and you're also going to be able to learn new skills along with offering your own experience and your own skills. So it really is a win-win. And that's really excellent. There are a lot of people who might think about becoming a volunteer, but they're not really sure what they would like to do or how to get involved with it. So when I think we're going to go to a break in a few minutes. And when we come back from the break, we'll talk about how we actually connect and how we get involved and how to choose what it is that you would like to get involved with. So, and then Bruce, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about the volunteer drivers, because I'm pretty sure that you've had some experiences that you might like to share, whether they're like funny ones.
Yeah.
So maybe you could share a little bit about that. Is there any funny ones that come to mind?
Well, as I said, Roots promotes social inclusion. And I can remember one time I drove a fella, for lack of better terminology, I took him on a date. He had a date with a girl. And so I was the chauffeur. They sat in the back seat and I'm driving along and I felt like dad taking a couple kids out on a date, you know. So I dropped them off at Swiss Chalet. They went in and had a lovely lunch. And then I picked him up afterwards and took her home and then brought him home. So it was, and here, you know, these are people that are in their 70s, late 70s. And, you know, it was an opportunity for them to get together. They hadn't been together for a long time. And that's the one that comes to mind. It really is, because it was just so cute.
I love that. Mark, you know, when you were saying that you go on the trips, so do you go with, do you usually invite other friends to go on these trips? Because I know these trips are really wonderful.
I'm kind of the organizer for the trips with the Gems, and I'll put it out there. We have our own Facebook page and who's interested, and then I'll make a list and I usually go over and pay it, and then they pay me back and off we go. And we pretty well have about maybe 14, 15, 16 of the women. So we really take up the bus. Shelley's pretty good. Sometimes she gives us the first chance.
Yeah. And I know that one of the trips was actually, you were saying, to the Mariposa Bakery in Aurelia. And I know that another one of the trips was to Toronto, because we were talking about how much it would cost you if you were driving. And I know a lot of people are not very comfortable driving in the city, right? Especially as you get older, I think we're not very comfortable driving in the city. And I know that you guys had gone to the city. So there's the driving, there's the parking, there's the actual event and activity that you're doing. And then, of course, if you go with Roots, you don't have to worry at all about any of that stuff because they take care of everything. So yeah, like I think the city trip especially would have been, you know, that would have been a good one to go on. So is there anything else that comes to mind, Mark, when you think about, like, especially when you went to the city?
Oh, we've been down with the Christmas in the distillery, so that was a nice outing too, and lunch. And where else have they? I know that they've done the. I think there's been trips to the zoo. We haven't done that one, but lots of different, such variety for, you know, everybody that wants to go.
Sorry, we're just going to go to a quick break and then we'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back to Aging Well in Georgina. I'm your host, Geraldine. And today we're talking about volunteering in our community with two really nice people who themselves are volunteers. We have Bruce Patton, who's a volunteer driver with Roots, and we have Marg Landry, who is a volunteer with Georgina Food Pantry, but also she volunteers with the Salvation Army. So let's start with Marg. Marg, did you want to tell us a little bit more about the volunteering that you do with the Salvation Army?
I got involved a couple of years ago. They were looking for volunteers for the kettle drive, which is that's their major it's their only fundraiser for the year. And I love it. It is so much fun. I have a little thing that I do. I like to give out candy canes, and giving somebody a little candy cane works well for the kettle. It's so much fun to meet so many people, and the kids love it. It's just a nice way to get out in the community, because what we raise from the kettle drive stays in our community.
That's good. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people don't know, they see people with the kettle drive around Christmas and that, but I don't think they know a lot about all the work that goes into that behind the scenes.
Yes, being a coordinator for that, it's a very, very busy job through a short period of time, because you'll have people, you've just got to get the number of volunteers for each different location and time slots, because you usually work a 2-hour slot. And that's a lot of coordination. And it's a busy time of year. Sometimes there isn't anybody at the kettle. But if somebody would really consider that would be something they'd want to do, it is so much fun. And all is raised, as I said, is for our community.
And of course, it really does make a big impact, not just on the people that you're helping, which is wonderful, but also on your own personal life, right? I mean, Salvation Army is also another great organization, and when you're involved, you yourself would be making lots of meeting lots of new people, and you're probably learning a lot of skills doing that volunteer work as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I'm meeting a lot of people in the community for moving up here and not knowing anybody, to the number of friends that I've made through both the food pantry and the Salvation Army.
I know sometimes you go shopping, I work in the community, and so you go shopping and it should take you like half an hour or something. Sometimes I just say to my husband, I'll be back in 3 hours. That's because we meet so many people that we know, right? And it's nice. I mean, people say, "Oh, I know you," right? So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Bruce, when you're volunteering, it's probably made a lot of changes in your life as well, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. It has. A lot of people volunteer for different reasons, but in my particular case, as I said, I found I had a lot of time on my hands, and I just needed something to keep myself busy and active in the community. And I tell a lot of people this, they say, hey, it's great that you're out helping people get to where, the different places that they have to go to. But I also tell everybody that, hey, it's doing me just as much good as it is them, because it makes me feel better about myself to begin with. It makes me feel that I'm still participating in the community. And there's nothing worse. I used to work with a bunch of guys that retired and sort of sat at home and did nothing. And you could see them almost wasting their life away, to the point where if they had gone out and done something like drive with roots, it would give them some meaning back to their life. So in my particular case, yeah, I've got a lot out of it. From a personal self-satisfaction point of view, gets me out of the house. The other thing is I get to see all sorts of areas when I'm driving around that I might not normally get to see. Yeah. I get to meet some fantastic people. As I said, yeah, it's made a big difference in my life. And truthfully, I don't know what I would do if I wasn't doing something like volunteering for Roots. I think I'd be just wasting my life. So it's a win-win situation. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I know that we had talked before, and you had mentioned that when you were looking, you went on to the York Region volunteer site.
Yeah.
So that lists all kinds of volunteer opportunities.
It does. It does. Yeah, there's the exact number I don't know, but there are literally probably 150 different type of volunteer functions that are happening out there that you can participate in if you want. I chose Roots because, number one, I love driving. It gets me out. The other thing about Roots too is I have control over my own time, which is kind of nice. I'm not fixed in having to go and do something at specific time intervals, or I don't have to do something where I have to let Roots know 3 weeks ahead of time. It's really like a 48-hour notice. And I know what I'm doing 48 hours from now, but I don't have to sort of pre-plan 3 weeks away. The other thing about Roots too is there's no financial cost to me because Roots reimburses me for my mileage. So, there's literally the only thing that's costing me is time. And I have a lot of that, so.
And I think there are, it's so true. It really is, it's a win-win. And I think the other thing too is that it's not hard to find an opportunity to volunteer depending on what it is that you're really interested in. And when you go on the York Region volunteer site, or there's actually one in Georgina too, and I think we talked that maybe they both hook up together. It's one big site and you go in and put in your area and where you want to volunteer. And then they have a lot of listings. So it's interesting what you were saying too, Bruce, and probably you too, Marg, as well. It's not like you're volunteering and working 40 hours a week. It's really up to you, right? How much you want to volunteer. Mm-hmm. Yep. Marg, do you volunteer just?
The pantry has many, many different ways you can volunteer. You can help with sorting with food. There's shopping with the clients. You're working on the intake, stocking the shelves. Like there's many different, we have one gal that looks after dog and cat food. And of course, through the pandemic, things have changed a little bit. And we also went through May and June where we had people that volunteered to drive food for porch pickup. We may be going back to that in October and November. And my husband and I do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's, again,
that's really good. I know that there are so many jobs. I mean, even when we go to, I know when I go to the hospital, especially, I mean, I will see all the volunteers there. They're always so helpful and so nice and so polite. And I feel like I'm really welcomed. Do you know what I mean? Like it makes me, because a lot of times when you go to the hospital, especially if you're a volunteer driver, or you're working for the Salvation Army as well, people may not be having the best day. Mm-hmm. And I think volunteers are so welcoming and, they really are generous in their time and their care. And I know for me, whenever I've had to work with volunteers or when I go somewhere and a volunteer helps me, I just feel like, I'm being treated really nicely. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that, there's a volunteer there who's giving of their time and their energy and their care to help me have a better day and to help me do what I need to do. And so, I think that we need, I think volunteers, as I said at the beginning, volunteers, I believe, are really like the backbone of our society. I mean, there's so many jobs that couldn't get done without volunteers. It's wonderful.
I think a lot of people that get involved in volunteering stay involved in volunteering. Yeah. I think once you try it and get the feel for it, then you really do realize how important it is to you as well as the people you're helping. I originally, and I'll tell you a little story, I originally got involved in volunteering on a regular basis with Chum City Christmas Wish back in 2000, as a matter of fact. And what got me involved was I had some free time on my hands, and I drove down to Chum City Christmas Wish and I said, hey, I've got a lot of free time. Do you need some help? And the girl that was running it at the time said that Chum City Christmas Wish didn't deliver directly to the end receiver. We would deliver gifts to the charities, and the charities would distribute the gifts to their users. And but she said, I just got a call from a woman who's got 3 kids, and this was about the 22nd of December. She said, why don't you take that great big plastic bag over there, fill it up full of gifts that we've got out here, and here are the ages of their children, and take it up to them, which we normally wouldn't have done. Well, I filled that bag up, and it was about 4.5 feet tall. I loaded it with gifts, 3 kids. I took it up, knocked on the door. The woman opened the door, and her 2 of the 3 kids came up, and they were standing there. And this little fella, he didn't stand any more than 1.5 feet or 2 feet tall. He looked at me, he looked at the bag, and the gifts weren't wrapped. And he looked at me like I was Santa Claus, honestly. And I felt like I was Santa Claus. And I've been hooked on volunteering ever since then. It was just a beautiful feeling. It's one of those feelings that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I know that we're going to, the one thing I'd like to know is, so I know that, so for Bruce, if somebody wanted to connect with Roots, Connecting Communities, so they would just go on the website?
They can go on the website, or they can phone Roots directly and talk to any of the girls up there, and they'll arrange a quick meeting where you get together and just sort of chit chat about, what Roots does. And if you decide that you want to pursue it from there, then they'll just do the, put together the organizational package and just do the appropriate checks, because they do double check and make sure everybody that's going to be driving people don't have any records, and that they've got a clean driving license and are properly insured and have clean cars. So they do go through that checklist. And then after that, you're on the road. And as I said, you have complete control over your own time. So they'll phone you ahead of time and say, are you available? on a certain day. And if you are, then you can take that ride and, as I said, go meet some fantastic people.
And Marg, for you, I think it was probably easy for you to connect with the Salvation Army or even the community food pantry, the Georgina food pantry, and ask about volunteering and maybe sign up.
Yeah, it was very, very easy with the pantry for sure, and both the Salvation Army. The pantry is always looking for help too, and there's so much can be involved with that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
So this was such a great conversation. And I feel like we're coming to an end of our show for today, but I just want to say a huge thank you to both Bruce and Marg for joining me today. I mean, I learned so much more about volunteering and what's happening in the community around volunteering. So thank you so much. And that's it for today for Aging Well in Georgina. I hope you'll join us again for our next show. And so for now, we'll say goodbye.